Hi, this is Peter Case. You're listening to the Your Morning Coffee podcast with my friends Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart. Weekly music news for the new music business.
From Billboard, are major labels cooling on viral artists?
From the Wall Street Journal, the $1.2 billion vinyl industry's rise, fall, and rebirth explained.
And from Single, tunes and tactics, the strategies behind May's music releases. Well, we've got a lot of stuff today. Glad you're here. Jay and I are both here, and we are ready to start the show right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand!
Your morning coffee is on the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
Good day to you, Jay. It is good to see you, my friend. Good to see you.
Great to see you. What an incredible morning. How about that Peter Case intro?
Let me tell you. I mean, we briefly talked about this before. We were and are giant Plimsolls fans, giant Peter Case fans, and to have a documentary coming out about him.
Oh, it's out. It just came out. Yeah.
It's right. It just came out. Exactly right. I'm sorry. It's out. And then B, to have him do an intro for us.
Yeah.
And oh my goodness, I couldn't be more excited to, it's a great documentary.
It really is.
Let's listen in on the trailer.
And hi, I'm Peter Case. Peter Case.
I'd heard a story that David Geffen had seen him in a club and was convinced he saw the next John Lennon.
The next time I see him, it's like, Peter, what happened? I go, you're David Geffen. You tell me what happened. There's always a reason why some kid ends up 3,000 miles away from home or why he's always traveling around. I clung to my guitar like a burning piece of wreckage on a sinking ship. What I wanted was a band that could really blow the roof off the place.
Living here in LA, I thought they were huge. I thought they were big everywhere.
How can you keep something like that lit? It burns too bright.
He decided to quit the Plimsolls and go solo.
And I'm going out in front of a sold-out house. I'm out there naked.
He went from rock guy to singer-songwriter guy, but it was very clear that he's a serious songwriter.
The New York Times gave Peter Case solo album of the year 1986.
They were just waiting for the next one. If he delivers a folk record, they're like, why?
He goes, I don't know if I'm going to be on Geffen anymore. I called them up, but they don't seem to know who I am.
It's like everybody's trying to get in there and I'm trying to get out, man. And I finally got out. I was like, yes.
He's really no different from any of the old greats. All those guys paid the bills by getting in the station wagon and going. There's a certain beauty to that.
I really don't know what I think about things without writing a song about it. That's the mystery of it. The world's in a really dark place, so I know songs don't save it. It's a war going on for the soul of the world right now. Not to get too heavy about it.
Sat up to the shoe at Pelican Bay in a solitary cell.
Saving the people, saving our common heritage, our common cultural heritage. It's missionary work.
I'm a million miles away.
He goes, Peter, for once in your life, take yes for an answer.
I learned so much about his career that I didn't know. And, you know, I worked that first Peter Case solo record. And of course, that Plimsolls record was in heavy rotation on my turntable for a long time. So for those that don't know, the documentary is called Peter Case, A Million Miles Away. It's available on Amazon, Apple, Google Play, YouTube. It's available everywhere. It is you and I love documentaries, and I've been turned on to so many great documentaries from you, and it's very rare that I actually turn you on to a documentary, but it was incredible.
It's a good one. And there's a lot of inside baseball stuff too about his relationship with Geffen Records and it's really, really good. And, you know, we were talking, and it's interesting to see that documentary and kind of go back in time, because we were both obviously starting out in the business or in the business at the time. And, you know, you recognize, now we talk about Americana as a category and how successful and popular it is, and so many artists that we love and go to see live and shows like that. But he was really on that way early. You know, that was a pioneer. Exactly. And, you know, and it really sort of documents how, you know, the challenge of artists that want to shift gears and, you know, and moved stylistically to something different, and how hard that is, and how hard it can be, and his path, which was just remarkable and really interesting. And it's a great documentary. Really excited
highly recommend it.
Actually.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
so
it's good stuff.
We were talking before we hit record about an announcement that we saw this last week from Undercover. And it's UNDRCVR. Why waste a bunch of vowels when you don't need to?
Vowels.
And and it's a great company we've worked with, but they've launched a new thing called Undercover Ads that we've been talking about. And, you know, that's one of those things in music marketing. There's a lot of tools that we've used, you know, ToneDen, Foundy, Show.co, Boost. There's a bunch of them. But I'm really excited to try out this Undercover Ads. Their founder is a friend of mine, John Frank. And, you know, I worked with him, in the WIA ADA days, and he used to be the head of marketing at 300 Entertainment. And he and his partner, Eddie Levy, they've launched this Undercover Ads, and they use AI and algorithms and things that I don't really understand to really highly target ads. So I'm going to set up a couple of campaigns here, but I'm super excited that, you know, we've talked a lot about AI and algorithms. They're not always used for nefarious purposes. It's pretty cool that they're being launched in this platform and in others. It's super cool.
Well, and, you know, we both work with developing artists and sometimes folks that don't have a big budget for advertising. And it's super important. The more targeted and the more impactful your ad buy and ad spend is, the better. And it's, you know, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. Sometimes it's throwing a dart against the wall with your eyes closed. But man, this sure seems like it's got some epic potential.
Yeah, I'll let you know how the campaigns go, but I always pull out the old joke, you know, half of my advertising doesn't work. I just don't know which half. And the great thing about, you know,
so true.
Stuff like this is that you can actually see what works. So we'll be reporting back on Undercover Ads. The other thing that you and I were talking about, which is just mind-blowing this week, is CNN reported that Queen's music catalog could be selling for $1 billion.
Yikes. And that's a big number, right?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? But as I was reading that article, I'm like, wait a minute. So you know, going back in time for a bit, you'll recall that if you were a Queen fan in when they came out in the late 70s and into the 80s,
and we were,
you would buy the records here in North America.
Yeah.
That was on Elektra Records. They were on EMI for the rest of the world. And then they were on Elektra here, and I'm not sure how that happened, but that was not uncommon with EMI artists. They had a separate deal for the U.S. sometimes. So But I think like back in 2011, I thought Universal acquired from EMI their ex-US catalog.
I believe it's Disney company, which is distributed by Universal, right?
No, I thought Universal had it for outside the U.S. and then originally Hollywood Records took over the North American rights from Elektra. So I don't know. I'm very confused. I'm not confused on the value of the catalog at all, though. It's, that is a crown jewel amongst crown jewels.
Right, and we were just talking about Springsteen recently at $500 million. Yeah. And some of these other ones like Bob Dylan. Queen's discography has 15 studio albums, 10 live albums, 2 soundtracks. They've sold 300 million records worldwide, had 9 top 20 hits, and 2 number ones. Another one, Bites the Dust, and Crazy Little Thing Called Love. By all measures, just this massive success. And we'll have to ask our friends who know this stuff, like where the rights are and where, the catalog landed and all of that. I do know a couple of people that would know that, and we'll look into that. But I thought that was amazing because we had reported on some of these large kind of acquisitions had been cooling off. And people had talked about, these acquisitions from Hypnosis, KKR, BMG, Primary Wave, that there was kind of a gold rush for a while, and then it seemed like they were kind of slowing down. But this is a big one.
This is a big one, and you'd be hard-pressed to find a bigger one, short of an Eagles or Billy Joel or Michael Jackson catalog.
Elton John.
But none of those really... Yeah, something
Beatles.
like that. But boy, that's $1 billion, and I wonder if that's including public. There's a bunch of variables we don't know. But boy, that's
when the deal
that's a big
yeah.
number.
When the deal goes through, if the deal goes through, we'll definitely report back on the details so we can wrap our heads around it a little bit more. And before we jump into our stories, there was another one that we were talking about from Ted Gioia, and we cover his stuff quite a bit. He had this piece out, and it was an analysis of 47 million transaction, tells an amazing story about the music business. And it's about some new research, this report from Andrew Thompson at Components. It analyzed nearly 48 million Bandcamp sales involving almost 5 million items. And it talks about what they learned.
Well, and, we talk about this a lot, and they come to the conclusion that success in the music business is all about selling physical objects. And, the internet supposedly killed physical music media more than 2 decades ago. iTunes launched back in 2001. No looking back. At first, the music industry pivoted to digital downloads, and of course, then we jumped into streaming bandwagon. But in 2023... streaming platforms still aren't profitable. However, Bandcamp is, and now we know why. It's about the tangible items, Jay, the tangible items.
Yeah. We talked about Taylor Swift, selling a couple 100,000 cassettes. We talk about half the vinyl being purchased by people who don't own a turntable. And we're going to jump into these stories after we thank our sponsors. But, one of our stories we're covering today really digs into that, and that's from the Wall Street Journal about the vinyl industry and why fans want something tangible, physical to show their fandom. But we'll jump into that in a second.
Yeah, so let's thank our sponsors, Jay, because, man, we really appreciate what they bring to the table every week, and we could not do it without them.
Yeah, let's do that. So first, we'd like to thank Hypebot. Since 2004, Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and the trends and technologies that are changing how music is discovered, consumed, marketed, and monetized. Edited daily by founder Bruce Houghton with help from Alana Bonilla, Hypebot and sister blog Music Think Tank are published by live music discovery and marketing platform Bands in Town.
You betcha. Bands in Town. Over 74 million live music fans trust Bands in Town to get personalized concert alerts, recommendations, and messages from their favorite artists. It's the #1 artist service platform connecting over 560,000 artists with their super fans. Managers, labels, agencies, and artists access their own dashboard to manage and promote their tour dates across all platforms. Big thanks to Hypebot and Bands in Town.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Every week I get to hang out with this chap, Jay Gilbert. He is a music business consultant. He's the curator of the weekly Your Morning Coffee newsletter and a former executive with Universal, Sony, and Warner Music Groups, and a Renaissance man through and through.
And this guy sitting across from me who turns me on to so many cool songs and documentaries is Mike Etchart, longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capital EMI, and Universal Music Groups.
Yippee and Yahoo. And let's jump into the stories then, Jay. The first one is from Billboard. Are major labels cooling? Yes, cooling on viral artists.
I've been hearing a lot about this lately. Because, again, there was sort of a gold rush for these quote-unquote viral hits or viral artists. But the problem with some of that is some of them have never played a live show. Some of them, honestly, we saw a few that hadn't even finished a complete song. They had a part of a song that they were working with. And some labels, I moderated a panel at Music Tectonics on A&R and data. And we were talking about this subject. Some of these A&R people just totally ignored what was going on at TikTok and YouTube and some of these things. They really wanted to have an artist that had already established a base and had engagement from that base. And then there were others that were just going after these viral artists. And I think that's really what this article by Elias Light from Billboard is touching on.
Well, and it's really sort of the 21st century version of the 20th century issue that you might have dealt with, when you're working with artists, which is, having a hit out of the box. And so people fall in love with that hit, not necessarily with that artist. And that is the worst thing that can happen in artist development. And so this is, as I'm reading this article, I'm thinking back to that situation, which is, congratulations, you've got a hit, but now what do you do with it? And people didn't fall in love necessarily. In this case, sometimes they fell in love with videos, or songs and videos, and then they move on, and it can be really, really hard. So
absolutely,
I don't know.
I would just like to add a quick quote from Keith Urban, which I use in materials sometimes because it's so good. He said, "You write a hit song and you'll have a moment. Build an audience and you'll have a career."
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, the article in Billboard starts talking about a song called Painting Pictures with rapper Superstar Pride. Basically unknown, with less than 1,000 on-demand streams in the U.S. in January, according to Illuminate. But as you know, TikTok is famous for its ability to help newcomers attract eyeballs. This clip, just a rapper and a microphone marooned on a tennis court, quickly passed 1 million views on the app. And the week ending February 9th, on-demand streams of Painting Pictures leapt from a negligible to over 130,000. Wow. And so we're talking about 8 days later, following week, on-demand streams ballooned to more than 4 million. So this is a kid who had a very rapid rise. We've seen this so many times.
There was this crazy conversion to streaming. One senior label executive said, Pride made the rounds. Every label was talking to him, but in the end, the rapper announced he was staying with United Masters, which initially distributed the single. Some artists prefer the independent route. Pride's success is just another example of an independent artist finding tremendous success without the need to give up his rights to, a record company. United Masters' Steve Stout told Billboard last month that his path, the rapper's path, was also complicated by the fact that the Faith Evans sample underpinning the song Painting Pictures wasn't cleared initially. Still, some in the music industry saw this episode as a demonstration of the major labels' more cautious approach to this sort of viral phenomenon.
Right. So one senior executive says 3 or 4 years ago, if that bidding war had happened, it undoubtedly would have come to fruition.
Yeah.
Somebody would have made the rapper an offer that was just too big to turn down. In 2023, however, some labels are disillusioned with their viral pickups, according to one music attorney who spoke on the condition of anonymity. There have been a lot of losses. Buyers are going to be a little bit more deliberate.
Yeah.
Buyers meaning, of course, labels in this case.
And we've been hearing a lot about this lately. You know, for several years, the mainstream music industry appeared fixated on signing acts with viral momentum, right? So during interviews, executives described the process of combing through heaps of song artist data, you know, from streaming social media platforms, especially TikTok, identifying tracks, you know, with a hockey stick graph, you know, and numbers racing up to the right. So, and they would scurry to lock in a deal before the competitors. Privately, though, some expressed surprise that the job seemed similar to stock trading, while others criticized the signing strategy as basically buying up the market share, but foregoing the tough work of artist development. There it is.
There it is right there. Absolutely. But you can understand, you know, the urge to do that. It says labels have been aware of social media's powers to drive wild surges of interest in songs for more than a decade, at least since Gangnam Style back in 2012 and Harlem Shake in 2013, if not before. In the years since, social media and streaming platforms have become far more potent, and labels invested heavily in honing their research, hiring data whizzes to develop tools that scrape these platforms top to bottom.
Yeah, they hire these, you know, I know some of them where their job is basically to look at the data from all of these different platforms, excuse me, and try to identify early on these sort of quote unquote viral hits. I mean, every big label has access to the same pool of information from social media partners, more or less. So, you know, a speedy outreach to artists is essential. But even so, there were a lot of bidding wars that were going on, especially, you know, 2019 to 2021. It felt like every single day artists signed a deal that was $1 gazillion, says another music industry lawyer who requested anonymity to speak candidly. And in the mad rush to beat out the next label, the song and artist being signed sometimes seemed secondary to the data. People are spending huge on sound effect records. One executive grumbled in 2020. Yeah, we saw some of that. And we also saw some of these artists, because of the fact that they hadn't developed a larger audience, and to your point earlier, it was really based on the song or the clip of the song. It's not like they could go tour, or they were selling a lot of merch or landing a lot of syncs.
Right. It says the article goes on, despite artists and labels' best efforts, it's now standard to hear that engineering a trend on TikTok is about as likely as buying the winning lottery ticket from the local corner store. And it's a lottery that appears to have diminishing returns. Viral trends in 2020 did not translate to streaming platforms as effectively as they did in 2020. Viral trends in 2022 did not translate as they did in 2020. All you can do is drop music consistently and pray, says another senior executive at a major.
I hear that every week.
That never looks good.
No.
Yeah.
I hear
a marketing plan when it says pray.
Yeah, all you can do is drop music consistently and pray. Well, they say that consistency is kind of that new currency, that if you're doing it, whether it's releasing music, a nice video strategy where you're releasing different types of videos, and you're using all these platforms and tools, and you're consistently, that's easy for you to say, playing live, releasing great music, that good things happen. But Helen Yu, a founder of a music law firm, Leesburg, she said that the market has been correcting. Labels are backing off in terms of just chasing a number. At some point, it comes back to the recognition of talent. And I think that pendulum's swung, Mike. I think that at one point, people saw success and everybody jumped in there and grabbed all these, you know, influencers and all these viral hits. And now it's kind of swinging back the other way, where they're looking more at a deeper artist development.
Yeah. Well, and it's, again, this is what's old is new and what's new is old. You know, this has always been the challenge in the business is developing those artists, and nobody wants one-hit wonders. And
no.
but it's like high school, it's the trends and things. When people are chasing these viral artists, then other labels start chasing these viral artists, and it just creates this momentum of crazy money being put out for, like you said, artists that maybe barely had a full song composed. And
well,
it's not going to work in the long run.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to this is there's one other ingredient in this recipe, and that is that because of the way that streaming pays, the pro rata model that we talk about all the time versus market-centric, user-centric, because of that, labels now are rewarded on market share, and that makes some go after some of these one-hit wonders or potential one-hit wonders because they need that market share bump because of the revenue that it creates for them. So I think, we talked about SoundCloud testing out this platform Fans and a user-centric model, with Warner Music. And, there are other platforms that are trying this out, testing this. There are those in the industry that believe that if we can switch from pro rata to user-centric, that it will alleviate some of these issues of people just trying to jack up market share.
Yeah. Well, things to consider as we move forward throughout this year. Very, very interesting. Let's jump into the next story, Jay. Number 2 for us from the Wall Street Journal, the $1.2 billion vinyl industry's rise, fall, and rebirth explained. And this was really a great piece. This was a video piece, actually.
Yeah, it's a 7-minute video from Wall Street Journal. It's part of a series called Explained, Wall Street Journal Explained. And we've covered a couple of others of these in the past. They're just really well done. It was by Alexandra Larkin and Justin Beltz from the Wall Street Journal. And it kicks off with Mike Shinoda from Linkin Park in a record store shopping, which is really cool. And he starts, just going through the bins. And, he said that all of his first beats were off sampled records. And, lately, Linkin Park sold a lot of vinyl, and Mike Shinoda loves to buy vinyl. He's not alone. Vinyl albums outsold CDs last year for the first time since 1987, to the tune of like $1.2 billion. And that's in today's quote-unquote digital era. People can hear hundreds of millions of songs anywhere. And yet vinyl, it's expensive, immobile, it was left for dead. It's now booming.
Well, and he talked about kind of saying, he didn't see this coming. He thought vinyl was never coming back. And, we've talked about this too. I would have said the same thing.
Me too.
It's like, there is just no vinyl coming back. And we were there for the send-off of vinyl when CDs were coming in, right? We saw that happen because you were at Tower and I was at an independent label and things like that. We couldn't make CDs fast enough and say bye-bye to vinyl fast enough. And here we are. And then in our friend Larry Miller, who's the director of NYU's music business program, came on. He said no physical formats ever came back, ever, until this one did. So, you would be hard pressed if you were voting or putting money down, saying that we're vinyl's going away, but it's going to come back. It's going to come back. You would have been laughed out of the room.
Yeah, I didn't know anybody who could foresee it, But this is an antique format that's coming back, both in spite of and because of the digital music revolution. And Larry Miller says in the beginning of the beginning, around the very early part of the 20th century, there were wax cylinders that carried a sound recording. Thomas Edison's phonograph introduced recorded music to the masses. Eventually it was, it used discs. But they talked to this guy, Mark Michaels, who's the CEO and owner of the largest pressing plant in the United States. It's called United Record Pressing in Nashville. And I thought he had some interesting things to say.
Yeah, he was saying back in the 60s and 70s when vinyl was really the only format that was still relevant as the core of the existence in the U.S., that place, United, was a very, very busy place. And it showed a graph in this video of when vinyl like just was at its lowest point, which I think was in 2006.
Yeah.
And Mark Michaels bought United in 2007. I was thinking as I was watching that, I'm like, man, that was a gutsy move that I'm sure everybody tried to talk him out of.
Oh, I'm sure. and now he's investing another like $11 million into all of these new state-of-the-art pressing machines because most of the machines that they're using are 50, 60 years old. You know, it's crazy.
Yes.
You know, he said that when he bought the company in 2007, it was a much smaller business. He said he had 38 employees at the time. Vinyl seemed dead. You know, nobody thought vinyl was going to come back except for those hardcore fans. But in the early 2010s, it did.
Yeah, hard to believe. And then, you know, Larry Miller comes on. He says, we could ask the question, why did that happen? All of the music that has ever been recorded is available to almost all of us on our phones. And Mark Michaels at United, he is of the opinion that there was something missing in that experience. And then you know, Larry says the answer lies in the way we express fandom. And I think this is kind of what we've been talking about earlier, which is it's key, you know, which is people want to hang on to stuff. I think that's just sort of a natural human condition is you want stuff. And as Mike Shinoda says, I think a lot of fans see buying things from their favorite artists as keeping those artists going. And yeah, you know, you want to do right by your artist. And that is the definition of fandom.
I do. I believe that. You know, Larry said it costs about the same as a black T-shirt at a concert and less than a hoodie. It contains the actual music, beautiful graphics, photography, lyrics, other stuff. And so for many fans, especially young ones, they consider that to be a pretty cool trade.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, Mark Michaels talks about, you know, as he started watching the demand go up and up and up, and he eventually grew to 90 to 100 people, went from running 1.5 shifts to 3 shifts. And they did everything they could do to accommodate growth. But as you mentioned, you know, one of the great things about this video is it shows some of those old machines and the process. If you haven't been to a pressing plant, I mean, it's like steampunk.
Yeah,
you know, it's these
really
gigantic machines with hoses and grease hanging off of it, and it's a dirty, brutal, loud place to be, but it's so cool.
I mean, it's steampunk is a really good way to describe it, Mike, because it really is like this ancient thing that almost looks futuristic, you know. And Larry points out that on-demand streaming services like Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, and so on, you know, they're paying out well under, you know, a penny a stream. So artists are making significantly more money on a per unit basis from vinyl sales. It stands to reason, right? I mean, today a vinyl record is going to cost somewhere between $25 and $30 per disc. And frankly, a lot of fans say they prefer the sound of vinyl to digital.
Right. And Mark Michaels at United says, you know, there's more life to it. It draws me in. I don't get tired of it. I want to listen to it more. And, you know, you hear that from a lot of people. Again, we've talked about this a lot. It's an active listening experience as opposed to a passive listening experience.
Yeah.
And as the Wall Street Journal goes on, it says, while vinyl is rebounding, revenue from physical formats made up just 11% of recorded music revenue in 2022. Vinyl's continued growth isn't guaranteed because records are really hard to manufacture, and most machines are basically antiques. Going on is what we said, and it also shows in the video Mark Michaels' investment at United in new machines.
Right,
and that is a chunk of change. Boy, let me tell you, that is a pricey investment.
Yeah.
But they're beautiful machines.
Oh, they are.
They show them in the video.
Yeah,
as well.
and it also shows that he's placing a bet that vinyl is not going to go away anytime soon, and I think he's right. You know, there are some issues. You know, Larry points out that it's still difficult for an independent artist or for an independent label to schedule the manufacturing and release of relatively small runs of vinyl with any great precision. But, you know, the industry's catching up. As you mentioned, new equipment is finally being produced. Mark, they showed those presses that you saw, and I think he got like 26 of them for that $11 million. Yeah. But now United presses 60,000 records a day and has, instead of 38 employees, they have 234. So despite those challenges, some industry professionals think that the format is here to stay. I think they're right.
Yeah. I can't see it going away at this point, but I was wrong the first time, so hard to say. But boy, it's a worthwhile. Go to the newsletter and find that link and check it out. Good job from the Wall Street Journal, by the way, to cover this topic, and they did a great job.
Yeah,
very cool.
Yeah, they sure did.
On to number 3, Jay, from Single, Tunes and Tactics: The Strategies Behind May's Music Releases. May's being the month of May, not Brian May, right?
Right, indeed. This is from Single. We've covered Single music. We've covered some of their things in the past. And it's really about how some of these newer artists, have been marketing their music. And they started off by saying that dropping new music isn't just about the songs, it's also about the strategy behind the release. This past month, we've seen top artists like Beyonce, Kendrick Lamar, Kodak Black, Kesha, and Lainey Wilson mix things up with their latest releases.
So it goes on. Music lovers got a surprise treat on Friday, May 19th, when Beyonce unveiled a remix of America Has a Problem, featuring a verse from Kendrick Lamar. This came smack in the middle of Beyonce's world tour, following her Renaissance album from last year. These two hadn't teamed up for 7 years, so their reunion sent fans into a frenzy. The remix release was nicely timed. The track was already getting a lot of love on TikTok, and this fresh remix added to the buzz. It was a surprise that fans didn't see coming, making it even more thrilling.
Yeah, and the next example they point out is consistent beats keep Kodak Black in the spotlight. So unlike Beyonce and Kendrick, Kodak Black opts for a regular release. On May 26th, 2023, he unveiled his 5th studio album, Pistols and Pearls, with a whopping 21 tracks. We've been seeing a lot of this lately. His steady output keeps him relevant in the music scene. His previous album, Cutthroat Bill Volume 1, was released in 2022.
Yeah, his new album is a blend of his signature style and collaborations with ESTG, Psycho Bob, and others. There's also a video for Gunsmoke Town, a standout track from the album, reinforcing Kodak's stories about post-fame life and street realities. And, I'm sure you were thinking the same thing as I'm reading this article. It really comes to the forefront of how important it is to just be creative with the stuff you do. Right. And we've talked a lot about the templatization back in our early days of the music business, how you just really had, it wasn't templatized, but your choices, your kind of verticals were
limited.
They were standard. Yeah, they were limited. That's right. And things have just changed so dramatically, but also shows the complexity and the challenge for an artist to be good at writing music, be good at performing, and then be good at marketing, and then be good at creatively releasing these different things. Yeah. And it's really, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's a lot to think. And as you said, you got to get a team together to kind of really effectively get all this, as these artists had clearly.
Yeah. A team and, a plan. And I love that they're mixing things up. And I love that it's not limited anymore. You can drop music as early and often as you want, and videos and other creative, and you can do an album with, dozens of tracks, or you can do, singles, EPs. You just need to have that plan. And I think it comes back to that consistency again. As you're growing your audience, as you're engaging your audience, is having a level of consistency. But I like kind of seeing how some of these tactics, like they talk about Kesha and Lainey Wilson, having what they call extras that shine. So there's Kesha and Lainey Wilson who know how to make their releases extra special. Kesha's new digital album, Gag Order, takes a different route from her usual party pop tunes, embracing a more serious tone. The signed digital album outsold the regular version, indicating that fans appreciate a more personal touch.
Yeah, Lainey Wilson followed suit with her recent Bell Bottom Country album release. The added bonus, a signed vinyl version.
Yeah.
Amid the digital music era, this old school touch offered a unique appeal that her fans loved.
Yeah.
And, you know, as the article kind of concludes, when it comes to music releases, today's artists are thinking creatively. It might be an unexpected remix, a steady stream of new songs, or a personalized touch to an album. They're finding ways to connect with fans and keep them engaged. The takeaway here, there's no one-size-fits-all approach to music releases. Artists have to find what resonates best with their artists.
Yeah.
But
I agree.
You know, I mean, and I know you deal with this with artists all the time. You know, you don't want to have you want to have a steady stream of stuff, whatever that stuff is, right?
Yeah, that consistency, excuse me, you're rewarded with that consistency on social media, on DSPs, on YouTube. We've seen that in the data. But I had a conversation yesterday with a music manager, and we were talking about, you know, some of these things. And she asked me about a release cadence. And I told her one that was a little bit different that we had tried that worked pretty well was with the band Vintage Trouble. And instead of dropping the album, we did this. So there's 10 songs. So we broke it up into 2 5-song EPs. But we didn't just release a 5-song EP. We did, you know, focus tracks leading up to that 5-song EP. But then we took those exact same 5 songs from that first EP and created an EP that was reimagined, not just stripped down, but like a reggae version or a bluesy version or whatever. So same songs. And then we did focus tracks leading up to that. And then there's EP number 2, which is a counterpart to EP number 1. Then we took those 10 songs, put them together for vinyl and CD. Then we replicated this process with EP number 2, which was the second set of 5 songs from the album. But instead of doing 5 reimagined songs, we did 5 live versions of those exact songs. And again, focus tracks leading up to each EP over time. And then we put the 5 live songs with the 5 studio songs. That was album, vinyl, CD number 2. So instead of just dropping an album with a few focus tracks that might get us through a few months, we had almost 2 years of consistent releases and things to talk about and publicity and touring. And it really helped. And the numbers bear that. You know, we had really good success on the streaming side with physical, with just publicity. And I'm not saying that that's the right release cadence for everyone. It just illustrates that the days of just releasing a full album every 18 months, for most artists, that's not viable anymore.
No. And that's a super creative. And I was, as you were saying that, I was wondering how long that time frame was. 2 years. That is fantastic. Yeah. And that's really what it takes. And that's super creative, a lot of work. Yeah. But man, that is a very clever approach. And that's the reality of what you have to do today to keep it relevant, because it's so easy to get lost in the shuffle, and for people to forget you and move on. And you kept giving them reasons to stay engaged with their fans, which is awesome. So,
and it's limitless.
Good work, my friend.
Thank
Jay.
you. It's limitless as to what you can do. I like to watch what other people do with their marketing. Music Ally has some really good resources that. Every year they show some of the top campaigns that record companies are using. But on the indie side, we're working with an artist. As the fan base is being developed, we have the album, but then we're releasing really nicely recorded videos of the artist doing some of the songs acoustically because it's so beautiful. And we're releasing an audio counterpart at the same time we release the video, and then it gives us something to talk about. And sometimes people miss all of the great tools that you can use on YouTube, you know, and one of them is that description. You control that description, and you can put sidemen, lyrics, you can put your landing page or smart URL in there. There's so much that you can do with that and to tell that story. So as we're releasing these acoustic versions and, with video and with audio, it just gives us something else to talk about. And they're so different than the studio recordings. And it just gives you a little bit better communication, collaboration, that dialogue. It's, again, it all comes back to that consistency.
Well, and we love that stuff as fans.
Yeah, damn right.
That's the beauty of it. It's the stuff that the bands that we were fans of, we would go searching for things like that. What's out there? And it was pre-internet. It was always often hard to find, but that's the reality of marketing music right now. Is make the fans happy, keep reasons to coming.
I think you just nailed it. It's like that fan mentality, and those people like us that work for record labels had that and have that fan mentality. And before we go, I want to share one other example of record companies that understand the fan mentality. And this is back in the CD era, really before downloads took off. I'm a huge Neil Finn, Crowded House fan, Split Enz, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And what was genius about their marketing, and I think this came out of the UK, is they would release CD singles, okay? But it wouldn't just be one of the new songs. It'd be one of the new songs with a couple of live tracks, right? And as a fan, you can't wait to get that stuff, right? But they would release it in a dual digipack, meaning that there's space for 2 CDs, but they would only have 1 CD in that dual digipack because a month later, they'd release the second CD for that set with 1 single and 2 live tracks, and you'd pay $10 for each one of those cheerfully. So by the time you got the second one, you just paid $20 for 2 new songs, but you got 4 live tracks, and you've got this collectible that's sort of limited. I cherish those things, and I wish I could buy more of them. And I think today it's like vinyl is like that a little bit. Like I buy vinyl. I told you last week, I was at Grimey's in Nashville and bought a bunch of vinyl. I have those things available to me via streaming, but not with that booklet, not with that experience of sitting and leaning forward. And also, it's my way of showing those artists, I support you. I want you to make more revenue, again, cheerfully.
Yes, cheerfully. Well, and you took me back to when I would go into Tower. I would often try to find those import bins that had it, and we were both fans of the band Jellyfish. And when Jellyfish came out, the UK label did a lot of clever things like that. And I would go looking for that stuff. And like you said, money wasn't really something I considered. It's like I just wanted that stuff, and I would buy everything that was available. Everything. Yeah. And
me too.
That's the beauty of fandom. And on that note, Jay, let's wrap up episode 147. I know Jay and I would like to thank everyone that listens and say thanks. We appreciate it. We couldn't do it without you. Yeah. We also couldn't do it without our sponsors. Want to thank our good friends over at Hypebot and Bands in Town. Thanks so much for helping us every week. We could not do it without you. And on behalf of Jay Gilbert, I say thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Your Morning Coffee Podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.